Hi everyone, this is Amy from the Helms Academy, and today we're doing our Math Roundtable recap from August 20th, 2020. So whether you missed us in person or you just want to go back and review some of these concepts, come on along. So we always start, if you've been around Math Roundtable for a while, with the same 4 steps. That's because when we're working with word problems, which can be a little confusing, we want to make sure that we have these steps really ingrained in our minds. So first you want to highlight, underline, or just identify what the important information is in the word problem. What are the numbers? What do they want you to find? Then you need to determine what operations are needed. Are we going to add, subtract, multiply, divide? We're going to write that out then using the numbers and the operations, and then we will solve. So let's look at our first problem. It says Devin owns a house cleaning company and has to give price quotes to potential customers. He figures out his price by assuming a $25 base charge and then adding $8 for each bathroom and $4 for each other room. If he uses P to represent the price, B for bathroom, and R for other rooms, which of the following represents his price quote formula? So you can see here, if we look at our options A through D, that they all look a little similar, and we're not actually looking for a precise number. We're looking for the equation that will help us to figure out what the price is. And we'll be using the variables given. So if I look back through this, I see some important numbers, the 25, 8, and 4, and then some important variables, P, B, and R. So I'm going to start with the P because I know what I want to find is the price. And so all of my options here start with P equals, and that's what I'm going to start with also. So now I've used my P variable, and I need to look at what else is in this problem. Now, I also started with a 25 here after the equal sign. So far I know that there's a $25 base charge. That means that anybody who calls this company and says, I want you to clean, has to pay minimum $25. Everyone has to pay that. So I know that I can go ahead and put that in the equation, and that's going to help me understand how much a person needs to pay, because we know for sure everyone pays that 25. And after it, I see $25 base charge and then adding. So when I see that word adding, I know I'm going to put a plus sign. So what are we adding? Well, we're adding $8 for each bathroom. So think about that. If we have 1 bathroom, then we're going to do 8 times the 1 bathroom. That's $8. If we have 4 bathrooms, then we're going to do 8 times 4, which is $32. So no matter how many bathrooms we have, we're going to multiply that number by 8 to know how many times they have to pay that $8 fee. Right? So that's why I labeled this as 8B, 8 times the number of bathrooms. And we're going to add that total to the $25 that everybody has to pay no matter what. Now our last piece we're also going to add on, which is the $4 for each other room. And just like the bathrooms, we're going to multiply that $4 times the number of other rooms that there are, which is R, our variable R. So you can see that our answer then is letter B. P equals 25 plus 8B plus 4R. Now for our second word problem, I've labeled this one as a word problem, but actually it's very direct in what it's asking you to do. So this one says, what are the coordinates of the point shown on this coordinate plane? Well, to find coordinates, we need to do X and Y. So they're always listed in this order, the X coordinate first and the Y coordinate second. And to find that, I always start at 0. So I'd encourage you to take your finger and point on the screen right to the middle of our graph. So this is going to show you that if you point right to the middle where the 2 lines intersect, that's the 0 point. And I'm going to follow the x-axis, which is the horizontal line, over to where it lines up with that red dot. You can see that's at -5. And then I'm going to follow it up to where that red dot is and see where it lines up on the y-axis, which is the vertical line, which is the +4. So my answer then is going to be -5, +4. Now, that is a very simple thing to solve, but there's a lot of room for error. What if we forget one of the negatives or mix up which one is negative or positive? So I'd encourage you just to take special care when you're choosing the correct answer, because you can see that our A through D answers here are really similar to each other. All right, so for problem number 3, we have some algebra we're getting into today. So this one says, given f of x equals 2x squared minus 3x plus 7, find f of 2.5. Now, you might notice here that we see f of x and then f of 2.5, which tells me, very simply, that we're going to replace whatever we see the x with 2.5. So you can see there we have the original equation written out, and beneath it, wherever you saw x's before, I've replaced them with the 2.5. Now, this is where we get into order of operations. We need to remember that first we do anything in parentheses, second we do anything with exponents, third we do anything with multiplication and division from left to right, and fourth we do anything with addition and subtraction from left to right. So you can see we took our exponent first because everything inside the parentheses is already done. So we completed the exponent, and 2.5 squared turns into 6.25, and I carried everything else down to the next level. Now we have 2 places where we're multiplying, so we're going to do those from left to right. So we see 2 times 6.25, and that becomes 12.5. And then we see 3 times 2.5, which is 7.5. We keep all the rest of the signs and symbols, so you'll see the subtraction sign came down and the plus 7 also came down. And our last step then is to follow the protocol of left to right, so 12.5 minus 7.5, and then add 7. And when we put all that together, we get the answer of 12. For our next word problem, it says, Max struggled with his math class early in the year, but he has been working hard to improve his scores. There's 1 test left, and he is hoping that his final average test score will be 75. What score will he need to get on test 6 to finish the year with an average score of 75? So the first thing that we need to do is recognize that an average means that we add all the scores together and then we divide by the total number of scores. Now, they already told us that we want the result of the average to be 75, and we have 1 missing test score, so that will be our variable. But whatever we get for the average, it needs to equal 75. Which is why I'm going to start writing it as 75 equals, and then I can fill in the rest of my information. So what I'm going to do is put in 75 equals and the total of the scores, right? We said we need to add all the scores together. So 50 plus 52 plus 77 plus 88 plus 91 plus S. And you can see under test 6 on the chart that I put in the letter S as our variable for the unknown score that we have there. So I have all the scores together there, they're added, and I have them in parentheses, so we know we do that first. And then we have it divided by 6. So with all that, you can see we are going to simplify what's in parentheses there by adding together the numbers that we can add together and making that 75 equals 358 plus S divided by 6. Now, our goal is to get S by itself so that we know what the value of it is. So if we can get it alone on one side of the equation, then we'll be able to figure out what its value is. Now, with this one, I'm going to look at multiplying by 6. And why did I do that? Well, you can see at the end there where it says divided by 6. That's one quick thing I can get rid of on the side with the S. And to get rid of it, I have to do the opposite. So I'm going to multiply by 6 on both sides of the equal sign, because whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other as well. So divided by 6, multiplied by 6, those cancel out. So it just goes away. Then I need to do the same thing on the other side. 75 times 6, which is 450. So now my equation says 450 equals 358 plus S. Now, I still need to get that S by itself. So to get rid of that 358 and make sure S is all on its own, I'm going to do the opposite. Right now it's being added together, so we're going to subtract 358. So if I do that, I end up with 92 equals S. So that means that he needs to get at least a 92 on test 6 to be able to get an average score of 75. So our final answer is C, 92. Now for word problem 5, we are working with some graphs, and this is some more complex algebra. So if this is unfamiliar for you today, no worries. It's great to get some exposure to it and get an idea for what they're talking about, but there will be other opportunities to learn more in depth about this. So this says, which of the following graphs represents the equation y equals 2x plus 1? Well, you probably remember from earlier that we have an x and a y coordinate on graphs. So each of the dots that you see on a graph has an xy coordinate. So that's where we're going to figure out where our x and y come from in the equation. Now, this is an easier one to solve because you can see if we look at the first dot on each of these graphs, the x value is always going to be 0 because they all start on that 0 line. So with that, it's going to make it easy to start narrowing down our options because we can plug in that x value of 0 into our equation, and it should tell us what the y should be. So let me show you an example. So if we show that x is 0, and then we plug that into the equation, that means our equation would say y equals 2 times 0, because we replace the x with 0, plus 1. Well, we know 2 times 0 is 0, so it just ends up being y equals 1. Now take a look at the graphs. Do you see on the first graph where our first point is at the 0, x point, but on the y-axis it's at 1, so our point would be 0, 1. That would work. How about on our second one? Also on the 0, and then on our y-axis it's at the 1. Okay, that would also work. But look at this last one. We're on that 0 line for the x, but for the y we're at 5. So that one will not work with this particular equation. So because we can see that the x and y don't line up for that last one, we can go ahead and get rid of it. Now, let's try plugging in our next values. So if you look on both charts, you can see that our next point is documented at the x value of 1. So over here, we have a 1, it's right between the 0 and the 2. And again, over here, our second point is the 1 right between the 0 and the 2. So if x is 1, that means we would plug in 1 for where the x is in the equation. Y equals 2 times 1 plus 1, which means that y should equal 3 if this graph is really representing this equation. So if we look on the first one, here's our point, and it is a 1 on the x-axis, and then it's a negative 1 on the y-axis. So this one is not going to work. But our middle one, if you go to that second point, it falls right in there between the 2 and 4, so it's a 3 on the y-axis. We already know it's a 1 on the x-axis. So that would work because it fits with what our equation says is true. Thank you so much for solving with me today, and I hope that you learned something new at this Math Roundtable. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get updates about all our latest videos. And you can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and at helmsacademy.org.